Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 8 of season 4 of The Walking Dead called Too Far Gone. And here we have our big mid-season finale. And I gotta say, this is actually after a fairly disappointing last two episodes. As far as mid-season finales go, this is pretty darn good. In fact, I'd rank this up there as pretty solid, even if you were to stack it up against season finales. Anyway, let's just kind of get right into things. Now, I did genuinely like the speech that the governor gives at the beginning of all of this. I mean, there's just enough truth in what he's saying to really make it convincing. Now, of course, none of the people there really know what we know about the governor, so of course they buy into it. But there's enough in there that you can kind of start to sense that maybe the governor really has changed more than we thought. And this is actually somewhat confirmed. He really doesn't seem to bear any particular animosity towards Michonne, which is, of course, utterly shocking, given the circumstances. But, you know, here it is. He's got this woman completely at his mercy, and the governor's just like, whatever, the past is the past. But the governor really isn't wrong in some respects. And when he gives that, when he rolls up to the prison, he comes out, makes Rick come down there, and they start talking. And Rick, of course, offers to try and work out a peaceful solution with him, because that's what Rick does these days. And the governor says that there's just no way that they can't live together. And you know what? On that one, the government is actually pretty much 100% right. I mean, if you were to take this offer, yeah, they'd go in there, they'd have their own cell block, and the second the governor was out of their sight, Rick and Michonne and everybody would be out, be like, okay, so we totally got to kill the governor, right? We cannot keep him here. This is just too dangerous to have him living next door to us. I mean, yeah, sure, Rick might offer a few obligatory, bit of pissing and moaning, but he'd go along with it. He would just not be able to tolerate a threat like the governor, literally right next door to him. And of course, Michonne isn't going to tolerate this. In no way is Daryl going to go along with this. And you have to figure there's plenty of people from Woodbury who would love nothing more than to see the governor's head on a pike after everything that went down there. So, yeah, the governor's totally right. Rick's offer is well-intentioned, but it ain't gonna work. It's just not gonna happen. And Rick's whole thing about things being too far gone, how they're not that way. Well, Rick's both right and wrong there. He himself found his way back from that really dark place. He himself was not too far gone. The governor, he's a man who almost made it. If things had just played out a little bit differently, maybe, just maybe, he could have, walked a more genuine road to redemption. But it didn't, and he couldn't. And that's why Herschel died. Now, I'll give you a little spoiler from the comics. Herschel died in the prison attack in the comics, and but not by getting his throat sliced by that sword. Actually, somebody flat out got beheaded by that sword. Now, I don't want to spoil it for fans who are going to go and check that out in the comics, because that one's a real shocker. But I will say that it's somebody who in this episode lived and is considered easily one of the main characters. No, it's not Michonne. Okay, I'll tell you that. But anyway, I mean, that right there is the moment. That right there is the moment where any hope we might have had for the governor completely evaporates. And I love his choice of words, liar, because, well, like I said, there's no way Rick could have lived with that. So the governor isn't wrong. The governor is not wrong that Rick is lying to him, that they can all live in peace. Well, of course they can't live in peace. But it also kind of tells us that the governor really doesn't quite believe that even he can be redeemed. Even he doesn't have that. he doesn't have someone who believes that he can be redeemed. Rick at least had Carl. And the governor had no one. Especially he had no one after Megan died. Yeah. And what in the world is up with Mitch? Okay, look, Mitch, you realize by destroying those fences and blowing up half the prison, you've basically made this so that even if you did win the day, you're all screwed anyway because the walkers are just going to storm right in. I mean, seriously, dude. I can understand maybe a little bit using the cannon, but seriously, those fences, those are the big ones. I mean, there had to be a better way to get into the prison. In fact, dude, you have people like seriously, like why don't these guys just like you know what? I'm just gonna let it go. I'm gonna let it go because yeah, there's no good gonna come from that. Anyway, so we also get some other interesting moments, like Daryl's reaction to finding out what happened with Carol, and Daryl takes that about as well as you'd expect him to take. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when these two characters meet up again. I really do love that dynamic between Daryl and Carol. They're two people who share a very strong and very enjoyable connection, but it's nothing so blasé or cliche as, lovers or anything like that. There is, of course, love between them, but, nothing, sort of, not love in the romantic sense, love in more the spiritual sense. People who have really formed a genuine connection. And of course, they do bring up that we still have to tell this to Tyrese, but Tyrese has bigger problems at the moment. And I like the fact that they do point out that, hey, none of the governor's people were responsible for the obvious psycho that we have in our midst. Now, who that could be, well, I'm starting to form my own ideas about that, but we'll save speculating on that for another day. Although it certainly was interesting to see the kids in this episode actually gun down two of the governor's men in order to save Tyrese. Now, one thing we've talked about repeatedly in these episodes this season is, what is this world that they're growing up in turning the kids of this universe into? And well, Carl's already killed someone, and now we can add 2 more kids to the roster. And just the look on Tyrese's face when he realizes what it is he's seen. Well, that really does kind of say it all, doesn't it? Oh, then of course there's the whole thing with Judith. Now, in the comics, it is unequivocal that Judith dies. Okay, you see it. There is no question at all that she is dead. But here, well, we don't know what's going on. And from what I've heard, that she wasn't part of the in memoriam bit on the Talking Dead after episode, along with Mitch and some of the other characters that got killed this episode, like the governor. So there's the possibility that she might still be alive. And there's enough people running around, like from the governor's people, that somebody might have seen, like, holy crap, a baby! And, scoop Judith out of there. Which, of course, would be a pretty interesting situation for Rick, because, what happens if, he finds out about that? And, of course, if Judith is alive, eventually he will, because there's no drama with that. And seeing as how we saw someone lose their little girl this episode, well, wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be interesting indeed? Not a huge amount to say about the governor's death. He dies differently here than he does in the comics, but it's still Lily that does the final blow, although for rather different reasons. Let me see. Actually, apart from that, the only really big problem I have with this episode is that the walkers are just conveniently gone when the governor and his people show up. I mean, literally, every time we see out by the fences, there's always tons and tons of walkers hanging around the fence. So how in the world is it that there are no walkers around and that the governor and his people can just march up to the fence without there being like a horde of walkers right behind them? I mean, last time I checked, Stank's tanks were not known for stealth. And we know walkers are attracted to noise. Which, of course, just makes the whole plan that the governor had really even more ridiculous because... okay, I'm sure you can all kind of puzzle out where I'm going with that. So, yeah, that was that was just ridiculous. And that kind of sums up, I think, everything that I really had to say about this episode. It's definitely a strong episode and a good season finale, so we'll leave it at that. Anyway, guys, as always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Till next time, take care and have a good one.